Welcome, and here we go. Hi folks, Editing Jones here from Tea Time. Welcome back. This is our third and final part of the conversation I had with Jesse. Sit back, enjoy. If you haven't watched the other two parts, you should go back and check them out. But let's get back into it. It's a different situation. So you look at the wisdom that's coming out of elders for Indigenous people, but I've been doing there's been a lot of connection with, for me, the LGBTQ community has become a much more prominent place in my reconnection, like whether it's Zoom or groups on Facebook or whatever. That's happening a lot more frequently for me. And it's been interesting to re-explore what it means to be a part of that community and an active member of that community. I think that just like Indigenous people, LGBTQ people, and any person of color or minority or anything like that is having, in some cases, a very similar experience in this, that, marginalization is coming to the forefront, and we're seeing where society has been lacking in looking after people. And so it's been a very interesting conversation to be in the LGBTQ community. And just, I don't know, what's your experience been with? Have you connected with any of that stuff?
I have. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple older LGBTQ members that I've been connecting with, and I think for me it's kind of given more and a deeper opportunity to listen to the stories, right? Much like in Indigenous culture, the same thing is happening with these older gay members of our community. Is now I can sit and listen to the words that they have to say. We have long, extensive phone conversations about what it was like for them to grow up in an era when it wasn't really accepted, right? And what that meant and how they coped and how they survived, and how a lot of those coping mechanisms are sort of coming out in pandemic times, so to speak. So
just the wisdom that comes out of that kind of community. Have you watched the series Out TV?
I have not, no.
Okay, so it's brilliant. So my partner got a free month or whatever subscription to Apple TV, and there is an entire season of Out TV. So I've only seen the first few episodes, like 3 or 4 episodes, but it's brilliant. It's like all of the LGBTQ celebrities, people in media, talking about, all the way from the beginning to before the Hays Code to the Hays Code, to how LGBTQ people have been portrayed in media, to where it's going, to what it's like. And there's a big section in there on the HIV epidemic within North America in the 80s for gay people, and just the struggle that came out of that, right? And the way that it was covered, and that it took having someone who was heterosexual play a gay man that was willing to, I forget what the movie's called, but he was willing to play a gay man that was, affected by HIV, had HIV in the 80s, and then had to tell his parents, had to come out. It was like what they call it, the double whammy, or the double thing, where you're forced to come out and you're forced to tell everyone that you have HIV, all in the same sentence. And so that's brought up a lot in the community that I've been in. Not just the Out TV does a really good job of like talking about it. I recommend it for anybody who wants to check it out. But it's been something that's been brought up about how the LGBTQ community has dealt with epidemics, which ended up being a pandemic eventually, HIV across the world, how we've dealt with that as a community, and the parallels between how we're dealing with COVID versus HIV. I just think it's interesting.
There's been some talk about that. Community elders as well, and saying now, like, there's nobody left. Like, they're the only ones. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It also brings up, like, thinking about pandemics, a lot of history with Indigenous peoples too, and going through any kind of disease that came to Turtle Island from foreigners, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the smallpox epidemics that decimated huge populations of Indigenous peoples, and yeah, that's sort of something that I've been reflecting on as well, about that and everything that it brings up. So
yeah, I bet that's really difficult for you and for your community, because there's constant reminders of, we're trying to embark on truth and reconciliation, but there's constant reminders within society of why we're embarking on truth and reconciliation, because it brings up everything that's happened in Indigenous culture, in history. Do you find that there's been are you seeing any, like, with any of the people that you're in contact with, any like re-traumatization in terms of what's happened with truth and reconciliation? Is it bringing up all of that piece as well?
I think that it's inevitable that comes up, right?
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about that is the amazing supports that are in place, and that are available to people in times like this, and in general, I think, through the whole process. Yeah, just, all of the elders that are available by phone, by Zoom, to meet, knowledge keepers. There's many different organizations, and one of the pages of the hashtag ST8ABED Spring 2020 newsletter,
yes,
the full page that we've created to talk about Indigenous wellness. What's out there? What can we do to help each other, to help ourselves get through times like this? So there's tons of links and information available for all of us, I think.
Yeah. So I will put, not only will I put the link to the newsletter in the description box, but I'll try and take out some of those links and put them in as well separately, just so that people can have access to them, because it's a huge resource. Huge. Thank you for doing that. I really enjoyed it. I scrolled through it. Yep. Great.
Awesome.
So I've been looking for resources for the LGBTQ community in the same vein. Yeah. And so I will link for any of you who are in the LGBTQ community, or think you might be, or questioning, or having issues, a friend is, or there's, some resources of places that you can go to get some assistance. And there are some local ones, and there are some that are national, which I'll see if I can link them all in the description below.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, we try. we try.
We're rocking.
Yeah, I'm excited because not only, has Tea Time turned into something that I like to do that's fun, because I get to talk to people, or that I get to, like, look at memes. We were talking about memes earlier. The students really like the meme one that I did. I'm going to have to do another one and find more memes. But, the opportunity to talk about issues that have come up, or things that are, I think that's really great. You know what we didn't do at the very beginning that we always do usually when we meet?
What did we not do?
You and I, it's because we know each other, but we didn't anticipate the audience. And so I didn't say what my pronouns were.
Oh, okay.
And so,
What are your pronouns?
My pronouns are she, her. What are your pronouns, Jesse?
So I generally would go by he, him. In my community, it depends who I talk to. I would sometimes use they, them as well. And even further, I would sometimes go by she, her. It depends. It's just interesting to talk about from the Two-Spirit perspective, that for Two-Spirit people, pronouns are, pretty extensive, right? For LGBTQ people, the pronouns are extensive, and they're all out there. So yeah, that's me.
Cool beans. Do you want to maybe touch on some of that Two-Spirit stuff, because it might be something that people aren't familiar with,
Right.
And especially language, because I mean, in the English language, people are having a hard time using they them as non-binary language. Never mind the plethora of pronouns and language that comes out of an Indigenous culture, because it's just structured differently.
Yeah, I'll send you a link right here of what the term Two-Spirit means and where it's come from and the kind of rich history behind it.
Sure.
I had it, but I've lost it, so
that's okay. Send it to me.
I'll send it to you. Yeah, I can do that. And then, yeah, I love one of my friends and his husband talk about in their work all the time, everything that they do in their advocacy work, they talk about openly about what it means to be Two-Spirit, and I'll send you then that link as well.
Awesome. All the links, people. All the links. Jesse's a plethora of links. I'm not that good at that whole link situation, but I'll try. It's been something that has been on my mind about how we label each other, given that I don't know if you watched the Premier's press conference yesterday.
No, I don't think it's
okay,
yet.
well, he touched on racism and the increase in racism towards people of Asian descent within Canada, given that this pandemic originated in an Asian country. And just, you've probably seen, like we were talking about being on the news too much, just seeing all of that about how people are being treated. And I will say that I am grateful to live where we live, because we have the opportunity to be a lot more open-minded than in other jurisdictions within the world of why or where this pandemic came from is kind of irrelevant at this point. It exists. And so the racism attached to it always makes me think of the minority groups, whether it's Indigenous people or the LGBTQ people or people of color or whatever minority exists, depending on where you are, there is that sense of lack of safety in a lot of cases. And so I don't know, I just think that we are in a time where we are reestablishing communications within our communities that are very deep because of our opportunity to talk and think with one another. And I would just hope that we would see rather, we were talking about times of renewal and things like that, it being spring and all of the things that comes with, a renewed sense of acceptance and community. And so I was wondering if there is a protocol for reconnection within an Indigenous community, if you've been outside of it, or if it's just like, the circle has always been open and you're welcome to come anytime.
I think that's it. I think you nailed it. The circle has always existed, right? Mm-hmm. And there's always space for somebody in a circle. There's always a space for everybody in a circle. Mm-hmm. No matter who you are, no matter where you're from, no matter how you identify, there's always room in the circle.
Awesome.
Yay!
I think we're going to leave it on that, because that's like the perfect recap of everything that we've talked about. Thank you for doing this with me.
I love it.
I want to do tea time with everyone all the time as much as possible, because it's so great. It's just like have a cup of tea and have a chat. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
No, thank you for doing this, Jesse. Hopefully
thank you.
We can have tea again soon.
That sounds great.
I know, right? Wouldn't it be lovely? I'm in.
I'm in.
All right.